Welcome everybody. It's episode 308 of the Severe MMA podcast. My name is Sean Sheehan, aka Shawnee Podcasts, the Score Lord, the legend, joined today by Graeme McDonald as we talk about a pretty big week in the world of mixed martial arts. So we're going to start off the podcast today by looking forward to next week. So we're going to preview UFC 261. We're going to have a look at a couple of other things as well. And then we're going to look back at Bellator, and then I'm going to throw it over to Sean Sheehan to discuss UFC Fight Night, Whittaker versus Gastelum, and also a bit of Jake Paul and the other lad, possibly, maybe, if that's actually a thing. But first of all, let us give a shout out to our friends over at Manscaped. And this episode of the podcast is brought to you by Manscaped. Flowers are blooming, the grass is growing, it's time to mow your lawn too. Thanks to our sponsors, Manscaped. You can trim the hedges below the belt safely and efficiently. I'm talking about the ball trimmers, of course. Manscaped, the global leaders in hems below the waist grooming, have an exclusive offer for our audience. Use the promo code SevereMMA to get 20% off and free shipping at manscaped.com. Join the other 2 million men who trust Manscaped. They're here to make sure your balls are smooth and nice. After that, it's time for some spring cleaning. I don't know what you're cutting with that. Oh god, Manscaped are the global leaders in men's below the waist grooming and have forever changed the grooming game with their Perfect Package 3.0. This legit package has precision engineering tools for your family jewels and will help unlock your confidence and best self this spring. The Perfect Package 3.0 kit comes with the Essential Lawnmower 3.0, which is waterproof, cordless body trimmer, which you just heard from me and Graeme there, and a ton of other liquid formations to round out your grooming routine. This third generation trimmer features a cutting-edge ceramic blade to reduce shaving incidents. Manscaped obsesses over technology to provide you with the best tools for your grooming experience. Inside the Perfect Package, you'll also find the crop preserver. It's absolutely fantastic. It's starting to get hot outside, so this is crucial to keep your balls, to stop your balls sticking to your leg. Okay. And as a treat, you'll find the crop reviver, which will keep your balls smelling fresh, just like spring flowers. On top of the Lawnmower 3.0 and formulations, Manscaped has thrown in 2 free gifts, the Shed Travel Bag and the Boxer Briefs as well, which are both brilliant. Your comfort is going to be next level all over the place. This is the perfect package for your perfect package. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code SevereMMA at manscaped.com. Do yourself a favour and use the right tools for the job. That's 20% off and free shipping with the code SevereMMA at manscaped.com. Your balls will thank you. Right, Graeme, let's look ahead to this big UFC card, UFC 261. And it's I suppose it's a while since we've had a card as big as this even. I can't speak today. 3 UFC title fights up towards the top, a big UFC middleweight contender fight, former light heavyweight title contender and a few more as well. On a scale from 1 to 10, Graeme, how is your anticipation levels for this card?
Yeah, I'd probably give it like a 7. It's definitely, there's definitely some very high quality fights on it and all that, and there's some fights that are intriguing. You don't know which way they're gonna go, but I don't know. It doesn't have I don't know. It doesn't have as much excitement as maybe it did the first time around when Usman and Masvidal fought. I don't know. How would you rate it? Would you have it higher than a 7?
I'd probably have it around a bit of a. I'd rather have it probably around 8, 8.5 maybe. I think overall, if you had like these 3 title fights, right, and say these fights had never happened before, and then you have some of the other fights which we'll get into in a few minutes, I think it'd be a brilliant card. And you and me and everyone probably saying it's in the 9s. It's a fantastic card. 3 UFC title fights on it. The problem is Usman versus Masvidal as the headliner is actually kind of taken away from the card for me and you and everyone listening to this, hardcore fans of the sport, because I think a lot of people, not only do we predict and know what's kind of going to happen, maybe, I think it happened in MMA, but we've already seen it and we didn't see it that long ago. And okay, maybe over the next week we'll be able to fool ourselves into thinking that Masvidal is going to come in different shape, and it was short notice for the last fight, even though this is only 4 weeks, so it's kind of short notice again. But maybe during the week, and we'll do the betting show towards the end of the week as well, and maybe we'll have changed our minds by then. But for me, looking at this card now, I think it's a great card with a fight at the very top that, like, I can imagine myself next Saturday at like 6:30 in the morning or 5:30 or whenever it is, and this is coming on. I'm like, there's just been, Andrade versus Shevchenko. We'll get into it. It was on. It was probably a good fight. And Zhang versus Namajunas was on. It was probably a good fight. And then we're like, oh, Masvidal versus Usman. Really? Do we really want to see this? And now, hopefully, I'm wrong. Hopefully, it turns out to be a great fight. But that's what's it that Artem Lobov says? It's easy to be the general after the battle. So I think when we're talking about this card, maybe next week, and obviously if it is, I'll change my tune and I'll say it was a great fight. But I feel like that's the only thing taken away from it.
Do you think if Masvidal had gone in there and gotten like a spectacular performance or knockout or something in between, just against, doesn't even have to be like, the second best guy in the world or the third best guy in the world, just a known guy, that this would be much more hyped. I think I don't think, usually there's people calling for rematches after every big fight, but I don't think there was too many people calling for this rematch. And I don't think too many people were too excited when it got announced. And as you said, I don't think too many people are too excited about it now. Maybe there'll be some kind of incident in the pre-fight or in the fight week or something that might get people hyped, or some good promos that might bring up the interest. But I think it was too soon to make this rematch, and I think it's going to look very similar to the first fight. I think a lot of people assume it's going to look very similar as well.
I have had people tell me over the last while that casuals will love this, and that people are buying into Masvidal, and there's going to be, there's going to be big pay-per-view numbers for this card because of Masvidal.
He did seem to be catching on a while ago, but I think he blew it. I think a lot of people just were turned off him, and just the stick just grew tiresome. There was nothing. There was no depth to the stick, so people were just like, "Oh, it's the same thing again," or it's a failed attempt at a humor, or a failed attempt at trying to be somebody or not.
Yeah, and it also went from like. But the problem was, right, there was depth to it. I think the depth to him was he came from nothing. He started baptizing people. He started knocking people out after all those decisions, all those split decisions he had, and that is what caught on for him. The fact that he hasn't done that, and
what if he had done Nate Diaz again? Yeah. If he had done Nate Diaz again, he probably would have won. He would have got a impressive performance or a finish, and people would have been like, "Oh, well, fuck, we know Nate Diaz," and
exactly. Like that's
back in the title more legitimately in most people's minds.
Yeah, that's the kind of argument we made about Edwards as well. Like, it's a great fight for Edwards in Nate Diaz fight, because if he wins it, he'll get that, and it's not not the hardest match in the world. And Nate Diaz is now probably 4 or 5 or 6 maybe years past his best, and with a bit of wear and tear on him. But I look, when you take a year off and you don't fight, and people like you because you're a fighter that fights all the time, and then you spend your year tweeting about politics, whether it's pro-Trump, pro-Biden, anti-Trump, anti-Biden, it doesn't matter. People, I look, you can get caught up online and you can think everyone has an opinion. The vast majority of people just don't like that shit, no matter which side of the thing you're on. So that put off an awful lot of people, and it put off like the anti-Trump people as well. So what he has done, and look, it all started, I think, with the whole McGregor thing where he was wearing the robe, and McGregor just fobbed him off, which is the worst thing you can do. He had a Jeremy Stevens moment, which is the worst thing you could ever want if you're a fighter, like being somewhat associated with Conor McGregor. And it was that whole robe thing was just so bad. But I feel like, look, it's a big moment for him, because he can get redemption from all of that. If he goes out there and he knocks out Usman next weekend, all our talk here is null and void. He'll have recaptured it all. He'll be back. He will be the welterweight champion. That is definitely
possible.
Yeah, do you think so?
That is definitely possible. It's definitely possible. This is MMA, and every round starts on his feet, and Masvidal's going to be dangerous in the first round, and maybe Usman's coming in thinking like, "Oh, this guy was easy the last time. I'm going to do the same thing to him." He could have a bad day at the office, Usman. Things can happen in MMA. You can get injured in the fight. Loads of things can happen. You can get hit with a shot. You know, you can go in for a nice takedown attempt. He can time it with a knee. We've seen his knees before on Ben Askren. I know it was a different situation, but he's definitely a skilled fighter, Masvidal, with a lot of tools. Like, if you make a mistake in there, you can capitalize on it. But I do think, you know, I wouldn't be betting any money on Masvidal, but it's definitely, you know, he has the ability to put people away and to land big shots. And I think Usman will probably, you know, win 4 or 5 rounds, but the threat is there from Masvidal. Yeah,
look, I think that the one danger for Usman, I did the rewatch the other day, and I watched back Masvidal versus Cerrone, and the reason I watched back that fight, you're probably thinking like Cerrone and Usman are completely different, that's irrelevant, but the reason I watch it back is because Usman has started jabbing a lot recently. He started being like a long fighter. We saw in his last fight against Gilbert Burns the way he kind of jabbed him up, and at the start he almost paid for that. You know, he caught a big shot. So Masvidal against that sort of opponent. Now, I'm not saying Cerrone's this jabbing master or anything, but he is a big, long guy, fights standing up very straight. And Masvidal's jab against him was just really good, and he was coming in with shots behind it and everything. And just if you fight him in that fight, so the main point I'm making from that, and the main point I got from that watching back that fight is, if you fight him in that sort of fight, Masvidal has the power. We see what he did to Till. He has the jab. He can beat you with the jab. So if Usman has fallen in love with his jab, you know, we've seen it with fighters before where they fall in love with something and it brings them down. That's one way I could see Masvidal winning the fight. And as you said, you know, like Rockhold against Bisping, he comes in, he's not expecting to win. He's just going in to pick up his belt, and that's it. That's another way he could lose. But that's, you know, a small percentage to me. I think Usman is almost certainly going to win here. I think he's an intelligent guy. Yeah. I don't think he will win. There's also
the fact the mentally from Masvidal, like, you know, his last fight was getting kind of manhandled a bit there, you know, dominated, and some guys, you know, they can take a fight or two to kind of come back from a loss like that. So, you know, maybe he'll be a bit tentative to throw, for example, a knee, because he knows that if he gets taken down, he's you know, it's going to play out it's going to play out badly for him. And if he just kind of stands there and is tentative to throw, as you said, he probably just get jabbed up, and Usman will be happy to do that and happy to win a decision. So, yeah, I think Masvidal should have waited. Like, you know, I think Usman's, unless Masvidal beats him here, like, I think Usman's probably most likely to be champion for at least a few more fights in the division. Masvidal, where does he go from there? If he's coming off 2 losses in a row, comprehensive losses probably in a row to the champion. Yeah, I think Masvidal should have waited, but it is what it is. It's happening now, so he definitely has a chance. But I think the safe money is obviously on Usman, as it always is in recent Usman fights. Yeah, look, I think when Masvidal, we'll probably talk about it next week after fight's a better time. But look, Nate Diaz is fighting coming up soon. Conor McGregor's fighting coming up soon. You know, win or lose, he could have one of those fights. So I think he's in a good position no matter what happens, but only if he takes it. He was in that good position as well a year ago, and he never, you know, prayed in it. But for Usman, the fight itself, he could always go back to 155.
He could, yeah. He could. You know, we'll probably get given out because we talk about weight cutting all the time, but I don't think he's a particularly big 170er, to be honest. I think Usman is so much bigger. I think this fight, if I was to predict it, I think it'll be very similar to the last fight, with Masvidal maybe being a little bit more careful and the first 2 rounds maybe being a little bit closer. I just think Usman is too good everywhere. I think, I actually think, you know, I was talking about the jabbing earlier on. I think if Usman comes out and he strikes at him and jabs him, it gives Masvidal a huge chance and a way bigger chance to win the fight than if the fight goes any other way, you know, wrestling or clinching or whatever it might be. But I also think Usman will win the fight if it goes there. I think Usman is brilliant now on the feet. I think he'll win the fight there as well if it goes there. So I actually find it very, very tough to see Masvidal winning the fight. And I think I could see this being a 50-45, but it's one of those fights. We've seen it before. We know the reason it's happening. Usman called him out because he made a big payday the first time. He's thinking he'll make a big payday again the second time because Masvidal is thought to be a draw. I'm not wholly convinced of that, but I suppose we will see, although I don't actually think we'll see, because the UFC, especially recently, especially during the pandemic, has been drawing with very good cards, which is a thing that you think, okay, obviously it's going to draw with very good cards, but it's not always the case. But I think this will. I think the 3 title fights will draw people in. And let's talk about the other 2 title fights while we're here. Zhang Weili against Rose Namajunas, and Valentina Shevchenko against Jessica Andrade. Let's talk about Zhang Weili versus Rose Namajunas first. I went back and I watched both of them. Actually watched Jessica Andrade versus Rose Namajunas to save myself a bit of time. But I think the difference here between Zhang and Rose is Zhang is more of a striker all around and more of a, like, I don't know, I'd probably describe her as like a taekwondo artist or a karateka, whereas Rose is kind of like an adjusted boxer, you know, a boxer for mixed martial arts, I would say. We saw her big knockout over Joanna Jędrzejczyk in the first fight with that lovely left hook, and her footwork and kind of angles are very good. That's always the thing, you know, we always joke about the angles in MMA, but Rose has beautiful footwork and she puts her angles together very well, whereas Zhang is more, you know, meaty, I suppose, is the word I would use. She'll bang it in there and hit you with a big shot down through the middle. She'll throw a big spinning wheel kick to the head or to the body or wherever it might be, and she's just strong and very, very athletic, which can be very dangerous when you're willing to throw it all the time, and really dangerous for Rose Namajunas. So that's basically the look for me on the feet. On the ground, I was watching Zhang versus Tisha Torres, and Tisha took her down with kind of body locks 3 or 4 times, and I was thinking to myself, right, I always say about Rose, whenever a Rose Namajunas fight comes up, we look at Rose's adjustments from being that early day submission artist to being like a boxer now. And I always say if she could put the 2 of those things together and the transitions between them, she will go on to be, you know, a pound for pound grade, a champion that will keep going all the time, you know, will keep going for years and will win the belt back from Weili or whoever comes next, maybe, because she's still very young as well, and go on to reign. And I think that's my take here as well, to be honest. I think Zhang will win. I think she's too strong, too athletic on the feet, and I think she's actually too strong. She's so strong, I don't think jiu-jitsu will work on her either. But I'm going to have like a little bit of a kind of a bet with myself here that Rose Namajunas might win this fight by submission. I really think she might, because those head and arm throws work against Zhang, because she throws so wildly and she gets into clinches a lot. If you can get her in that clinch, she will go down from it. Now, she is very strong and very good at getting out of it, but we've seen Rose Namajunas before win fights or go for flying triangles and flying arm bars and stuff like that. If she can cinch up that submission very quickly, and if she's ready with her jiu-jitsu for when Zhang puts herself in that position, I could see Rose Namajunas winning the fight in that way, and that's one thing I would suggest people look out for. But I do think this will be a striking battle even, and I'm really looking forward to it. What's your call on this one, Graeme? You looking forward to this title fight?
You mentioned there that Rose in the past would go for like kind of crazy submissions, but I think maybe, you know, what happened to her against Jessica Andrade in the fight she was winning maybe will kind of steer her away from anything too crazy. But we've seen her take the back quickly and stuff like that, and we could see that here, you know, as you said, like obviously we know how good Zhang is on the feet. If there's any weakness, it might be in you know, exposing that Tisha Torres fight, and Tisha Torres is like, you know, she's going to cause a lot of troubles for people with her high energy game and her wrestling, but her wrestling isn't exactly explosive, you know. It isn't like top level or anything like that. So there's definitely methods of victories here. Like Rose can knock people out. She's shown that in the past. I don't think that's going to happen here, but it's definitely a possibility. But I could see, if she could create a scramble and a takedown and take the back and work from there. I think she's a very strong in all positions, and she's obviously, you know, she's fought 22 fights and only lost 1. She's very experienced. Rose has been around a long time in the UFC, but has only had about half the fights. So I think it's hard to pick Rose in this one, but there definitely possibilities and methods of victories that she could accomplish. But I definitely wouldn't be. You were saying to make it a bet with yourself. I wouldn't be making any money bets anyway.
Yeah, I don't know if we'll be doing the betting podcast anyway on Friday, so it'll be an interesting one. Maybe it'll be one of my outside bets to go for Rose by submission. But yeah, look, I think it'll be a long fight. I think we're in for a lot of long fights on Saturday night, and I think this will be another long one. But I'm looking forward to it. Look, I suppose we have to mention as well, we talked about Masvidal and him getting into like the political stuff as well. Rose Namajunas did the same this week, where she was talking about like, and look, a lot of people take this a lot of different ways. She was talking about communism in China, and she was talking about, you know, better red than dead, and she was talking about Lithuania, where her people come from and things like that. And look, overall, I think the point she was trying to make was that she's anti-communism, and which is absolutely grand. But her saying that now that she's fighting someone from China and she's fighting this specific person, and even though she said it's not because of, you know, I'm not saying this because I'm fighting this specific person. Well, why are you saying it now? So I think like she lost a few fans because of that. Even people I think who would kind of agree with the overall point. It's just such a bad time and such an idiotic time to bring it up. And there's a lot of, you know, it's kind of a thing in America as well with, because of after obviously COVID-19 and coming from China and things like that, there's been a lot of Asian crime and stuff, or Asian, you know, attacks and stuff in America over the last while. So it's kind of a buzz thing now as well. So it's a really, really bad time to bring it up. And a thing hopefully it's something that won't kind of drag on for too long, because I don't think she meant it as badly as it kind of sounded, I think, but it was one of those things anyway, which is a kind of a lot of talk in the build up coming up to this fight. So we'll see how that plays out, and we'll see how the fight plays out as well. But the fight itself, I think it's going to be a fun one. I think like when you have two strikers like this who are kind of different sort of strikers, but both fast paced and can hit hard and throw a lot, that's always going to be fun. So I'm looking forward to seeing how it plays out. And then Valentina Shevchenko versus Jessica Andrade. My thoughts coming into this fight are enjoy it, because this might be the last time Valentina Shevchenko has a challenge for a long time, unless she goes up, unless she goes down, or maybe until maybe if Zhang Weili goes up, maybe she's not going to get another challenge. Jessica Andrade has the best chance out of anyone in that 125-pound division of beating Valentina Shevchenko. And to be honest, I don't think she has much of a chance. Now, she's, as I said, better than anyone, but how do you see it, Graeme? Do you think Andrade has a big chance? That's what I was just going to
say. I was like, no, I don't think so. I thought you were going to say that. I was thinking, no, I don't think so here. You know, she's definitely a really tough fighter. Like, she's well-rounded, she's developed, she's definitely much better at this weight class. Obviously, she's a former champion and all that, but she's fought the best. Champion, yeah, and she's fought the best. So, you know, maybe she got the belt in a strange situation or whatever, but she got the belt. So, she's definitely at the top of that division. But I think the skill level is just completely. Shevchenko's just better everywhere. I know maybe just like brute force is with Andrade, but besides that, I think everything else is with Shevchenko. So I think she should be able to kind of pick her apart with technique, and you know, just mixed martial arts skill will just be too much for Andrade.
Yeah. Look, it's one of these fights where I watch back an Andrade fight and you see what she does very well. She's one of these ones where you don't know if she's in the middle of like these big barrages of shots that she throws. You're like, is she a southpaw? Is she an orthodox fighter? Because she just throws and throws and throws and throws. And that, do you know what? That's actually a very good tactic, I think, against someone like Shevchenko.
Just like bullheadedness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you have to be a little bit like that and willing to get hit a lot against Shevchenko to have the chance to go in and knock her down. Look, unless you're a really big, strong wrestler that can hold her down. I know maybe Andrade might do that as well, because when you do that, when you are, you know, a bull-like, to steal a phrase from WWE, a bull-like structure, and go inside and throw hands like that inside it does open up the takedown and the clinch a little bit. So Valentina Shevchenko has brilliant takedown defense and a fantastic clinch as well. You know, a lot of these Muay Thai fighters have very, very good clinches, and she's definitely one of those, and hits with elbows and is really good there. She's really good on top as well. You know, we saw that in her recent fights, especially. But I think Andrade might look for a few takedowns. I think you have to change things up against Shevchenko. If you want to hit her with a big shot, if you want to knock her out, I think you have to adjust your game. I think you have to be varied. But that is the big issue with Shevchenko. Do you know what Shevchenko reminds me a little bit of? And it's funny, we're just after watching Man City versus Chelsea there, and I believe Man City lost. But like a Man City or a Barcelona, one of these teams who just keeps possession all the time, and they never look in too much trouble, and they always look smooth, and they always look like they have you in big trouble, you know? She looks like one of those people who is just like winning and winning and winning and winning, and then you cannot just get that momentum back from her anyway. Is there, like, do you think there's a way, like, sometimes we see fights, like, say, like a TJ Dillashaw back in the day against Hinnen Barrow, and everyone thought Hinnen was going to go out and kind of, you know, run that fight, and then TJ kind of turned around and he did it. Is there any way, like, you can see that Andrade could do a similar thing to Vadim Shevchenko? That's a very loaded question, I suppose, but it's tough, isn't it?
Yeah, I think TJ, like, you know, the alpha male problem was, you know, there were a bunch of wrestlers, and Dwayne Ludwig came in and clashed with Uriah Faber, the king of alpha male, and it didn't really work. And when TJ went off with him, went off with Dwayne and put in, like, you know, a lot of work on the striking realm, it really paid off. Like, I don't know the situation with Andrade, if she's brought in any kind of new systems or any new striking coaches or anything like that, but I just don't think she has the technical striking to trouble Shevchenko. She's gonna have to, make it dirty or push her up against the cage and try to rough her up a bit, or
that's what she needs to do.
Yeah, or threaten her with the takedowns and make Shevchenko worried about that, and maybe she can get her striking going. Then Shevchenko has one eye on the takedowns, and the striking can kind of come into its own then for Andrade. But I just don't see it happening. I just see Shevchenko cruising.
I think it's a similar sort of chance to Masvidal. I think, look, she's a big hitter. She throws big shots, and she can smash you down in the top of your head like she did against Rose Namajunas. So she always has a chance. But that is kind of taken away from what we know about MMA, and we know that MMA is becoming a little bit more predictable, although it's always going to have a level of unpredictability. But when you get someone as good as someone like Valentina Shevchenko, I think it's a pretty safe bet that she's going to win. Although I'm looking forward to it. I think Andrade won't make it easy for her. I think she'll continue, to battle the whole way through while being a very good fighter herself. So it's not just a case of, like Cyborg, 90% of her fights where she's put in against someone who is tough and they'll stick in there against her while getting the shit beat out of them. I think Andrade will actually, might win a round, might win 2 rounds, but I think Shevchenko will win this one again. Like, I have a feeling that all these fights are going to go to a decision. I would be surprised if any of them didn't. I will, maybe Whaley versus Namajunas, but we could be in for a long night of 25-minute fights next week. But sure, however. Elsewhere in the main card, then actually we'll finish off with Uriah Hall versus Weidman in a second. But on the undercard, I'm looking at the prelims, the ESPN prelims. There isn't one person with a Wikipedia page on it, which is, I suppose, says a lot about it.
Is that Randy Brown, or who is it who has a Wikipedia page?
No, well, that's in the prelims, but the early prelims, none of them. Kevin Atvidad is there, and Jeffrey Molina and stuff. So I don't know any of them boys. We'll see later in the week maybe. Brendan Allen versus Carl Robertson is a pretty good fight. Tristan Connolly, even, who beat Mikael Pereira in his UFC debut, is back. He's down at featherweight after fighting at 170 against Patrick Sabatini. I wouldn't mind seeing maybe the winner of that fight, Paddy Pimblett. If Paddy's gone down to featherweight again, I think Tristan Connolly versus Paddy Pimblett would be a good fight. So maybe that's one to look out for. Dwight Grant against Stefan Sekulik, and Alex Cowboy Oliveira against Randy Brown. I saw Alex Oliveira was a question over on the dozen there on Barstool the other day, so he's famous for that. Then Anthony Smith versus Jimmy Cruz. Jimmy Cruz is a tough guy, and Anthony Smith's a tough guy as well, I suppose. But Jimmy Cruz coming in after he beat Modestas Bukauskas, if I'm not mistaken, his last fight after losing to Misha Cirkunov. I think there might have been one in the middle of that as well. And Anthony Smith is people were kind of calling for him to retire there after a couple of fights, but he came back against Devin Clark and won after a fight against Alexander Rakic, which went to decision. And it was before that the horrendous beating against Glover Teixeira went down. So that should be a fun one as well. And then we have Uriah Hall versus Chris Weidman in a rematch from a fight that happened before their UFC days.
Rematch.
Yeah, long awaited. Uriah Hall has to be the pick here, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, yeah, I think it's a hard one to pick. Uriah Hall is flaky throughout his whole career. He's had problems with not wanting to hurt people, and he's had problems with just the mental side of fighting, I think, in general, and letting the shots go. And maybe the fact that Weidman's beaten him before might play into his thinking and his mindset and might affect him. But Weidman has just looked so awful recently. If Uriah Hall can get any kind of shot landed on him, it'll probably have him in trouble. And Weidman, if he goes in there wrestle heavy, Hall's not very good on the ground. If Weidman goes in there with a really smart game plan to be really wrestle heavy and can still has enough juice in the tank to shoot a few takedowns, 3 takedowns, and then he can win the fight. So it's not a write-off, it's a winnable fight. But Uriah Hall, as long as he's mentally all there, he has a big chance of winning as well. But with Uriah Hall, I wouldn't be too confident either. So yeah, this one could go either way, I reckon.
I think I'm more confident in Uriah Hall. Is Uriah Hall fighting out of Stanford MMA these days as well? I think he is, if I'm not mistaken. And they've been doing really well recently. And I think he has kind of turned the corner a little bit. But as you said, look, we saw against Akhmedov and especially against Gastelum as well that Weidman can still do it if he is smart and he's with the game plan. But he got knocked out by Jack Graeme, knocked out really badly against Dominic Reyes as well in that fight. So, look, who would you if you were to ask me who I have more confidence in at this stage of their careers, I would have to say Uriah Hall. He got the win over Anderson Silva in his last fight, which seems like an age ago. And he's won 4 of his last 5, so he's in a pretty good run here, and he's not miles away from the title shot. But it's not a difficult one. I'm definitely picking Uriah Hall, and I think he will land a big shot and knock him out. But sometimes Uriah Hall can go in there, and we'll talk a little bit about that when we get to Bellator in a second. But Uriah Hall can go in there, and he can not throw a punch for ages, and he can end up losing the fight because he's either been taken down a few times and he's got tired, or he's just lost a bit of his power the longer the fight goes. And then Uriah Hall is the type of guy who needs to go in there and needs to do a McGregor early or a Belfort early or something like that. He's a fast twitch knockout artist, and it's actually a topic we might just move over to that topic now, because I was talking to the lads in the Severe MMA group the other day about that. I think it was Ian I was talking to and Jake about athletics being a big thing in MMA, and about people realizing what their athletic ability is. Now, there was 2 fighters in Bellator last night, and we'll get to them as well, or Friday night depending on when you're listening. And Phil Davis was the one in the main event, and then Julia Budd as well. 2 of them are very similar sort of athletes. Obviously, in one's a UFC 205-pound man, the other one's 145-pound woman. But you know what I mean? They're for the weight class, they're big, tall, strong, long, relatively fast, and everything. They have all the athletic ability you'd want. Now, not everything, not all the athletic ability, but they're strong athletically, and how they use it is a very, very interesting thing, because usually when you get someone like that and they go to a good camp, the camp seems to teach them all the basics, and be basic, do this, use your basics. And I actually think that's a good thing to do, right? But you also need to get them out of that once they have those basics. I think if you have someone like a Francis Ngannou, and if he's gone out and he's jabbing up someone the whole time, and he's just standing on the end of the jab, he's going to turn into Phil Davis. He's going to turn into this boring fighter who has never used his athletic ability because he is paralyzed by this analysis and paralyzed by being very good basics.
GSP because they knew he could do so much more. He could finish the guys, but when he was champion, a lot of his 5-round fights went to decisions. Even like, you know, he was jabbing Josh Koscheck in the eye 400, 500 times, whatever the fuck it was. He could have finished them, didn't. You know, he was taking people down, not really taking any chances, not really posturing up to land too many shots or taking any risks whatsoever. And, you know, you can be dominant and all as well. And you can be dominant like GSP and people will still get pissed off. Obviously, you know, a lot of people would take GSP's career and they wouldn't care what people said. Yeah, the fans thought, but you know,
there's a line there, though, isn't there? Like, there's a line. Yeah, like, if you're doing as well as GSP, shut the fuck up. You don't need to listen to me. Like, you know, you don't need to go out and start throwing hands like Francis Ngannou. But if you have a career like Phil Davis, where you're on the precipice of being a champion for years and years and years, and you never quite make it, that is the issue. And we're like, why doesn't Phil Davis make it? Like, someone said to me last night, like, he's the very same as Usman. Why can't he do it? And I was like, right, he doesn't have the striking ability of Usman. Like, he just does not have that. Why does Phil Davis go out and strike in all of his fights? Why? Why is Phil Davis not going in there, double-legging people, trying to take him down, do nothing but wrestle, turning into Habib Nurmagomedov? Like, why isn't he using that God-given athletic ability that he has and that he has kept? And look, he's in unbelievable shape, and he has been throughout his whole career.
If he had Carl Pendred's game plans, you know what I mean? If he played up to his strengths as much as a Carl Pendred, for example, did, you know, a guy who, you know, would tell you himself that he's not the most, like, you know, seasoned striker or well-rounded, you know, martial artist, but he knew what he was good at, which Phil Davis is even better at, and. You know, he obviously Phil Davis has had some big wins in the past, but you know he could have done a lot more. He had a lot of promise. I don't know. For who looks so awkward when any punch comes close to him, he's way too comfortable striking. As you said, if he was like Habib or Pendred, where he just his game plan was to just basically wrestle you and take down attempts to get her until he gets you down. You know, he'd be a big problem for everybody in the heavyweight division. He'd be a big problem for Francis Ngannou. He'd be a big problem for anybody. But you know, he's I don't know what the reasoning is behind it. You know, maybe his wrestling isn't quite what it was. Maybe it's the games that have passed what he was good at, and he's unable to do it anymore. But I think he got away from it before when it was working. He seemed to get away from it, even in victories like against people like Machida way back. I know that was like he didn't actually win that fight, but he got the decision. But you know, he could have legitimately won that fight if he had just wrestled him, but didn't for some reason. It's
do you know what it is?
Sometimes this happens.
I know what it is. I know it's like. It's being intelligent in a fucking stupid sport. You know, MMA, intelligence will only get you so far when you're fighting MMA. You have to be a little bit fucking stupid. Like, okay, and people will probably say to me, what about GSP? What about Dominic Cruz? Well, there's always exceptions to the rule, okay? But it's a little bit as well like the low calf kicks and a lot of like attacking fighters like McGregor versus Poirier getting caught with him. You're doing really well attacking, but you're getting ed up because you're in an attacking position, winning that fight, and then you bang, your leg is gone, you're gone. Fighting like a Phil Davis or like a Uriah Hall, I actually think Uriah Hall is a justice, which I'll talk about in a second, but fighting like that, and certain fighters do it all the time, and they get. I think Volkov is a small bit like that as well, and kind of it seems to be a big guy thing as well. But I think Julia Budd as well, which we'll talk about in a second, is a little bit like that at times. It will get you so far, and it's a very smart thing to do. You know, you're fighting defensively, you're not taking many shots, you're winning. You know, you'll win most fights fighting that way, but to be the very best and to beat the very best, like Davis versus Nimkov last night, you need an X factor, you need something different, you need to go to the next level, because the person you're fighting in MMA today will have what you have. They will have the basics, they will have the athletics, but they'll also have that X factor, like Vadim Nimkov last night, throwing those big straights down through the middle, jabbing the fucking face off Phil Davis non-stop for 3 or 4 rounds. People will have that in MMA today, but we're still in a position in MMA, right, where if you're a good athlete, you will still do very, very well in MMA, especially in women's MMA, which is obviously, you know, 15 or 20 years maybe behind the curve of men's MMA, becoming like really professional and really to the top level where it came to where it came into the UFC and stuff like that. So it's a little bit even more prevalent there. But I think it's a very interesting debate, and maybe it's a debate we'll have another time again on the podcast and a continuing one, because you have to be. I remember Luke Thomas did a thing about it before in one of his Q&As. I don't know, probably about 5 or 6 years ago, and I was thinking about it at the time, and I didn't know if I agreed or not. But he was talking about like a proclivity to violence. And I think that is a very interesting point. Like that, you can only be a good athlete. You can only be, strong. You can't only have a good chin. You can't have all these things. You also have to have that fucking ruthless streak to want to Dan Henderson knock someone's spark out like that, You have to want that to be the very, very, very best at the top of MMA. And Phil Davis doesn't have that. Like, Phil Davis, he's just Mr. Wonderful. He seems like a wonderful guy, like, and most people that get to the top of MMA, and they are fucking pricks. Let's be honest about it. A lot of them are, and that's, I don't know, I just think it's an interesting debate, and something I really thought of last night watching him, and watching Julia Budd as well. Like that Julia Budd fight, okay, she went in and won, but she was fighting someone called Diana Silva, who is not as good of an athlete, I think, as Julia Budd, but she's faster and big and tall as well. She's not as strong. And I could see Julia Budd there, and she was fighting the whole fight. A lot of people thought it was, it was a close decision. It was a split decision, if I'm not mistaken. Let me just look here and find out. Yeah, it was a split decision. It could have gone either way, but Silva was tall and fast. And just met with that, Julia Budd struggled. Someone who was almost as athletic as her, or has a very good athletic base as well, gave her trouble. And I thought that was a very interesting thing to look at it. But however, I'll just run through some of the card there, Graeme. I know you didn't see all of it, but JJ Wilson and Pedro Carvalho was the first fight on the night, amazingly. This was like an upside-down card. Some of the best fights were on the bottom, and as we got up towards the top, there was some not so great fights. But however, Pedro got taken down immediately in round one. But he kind of turned over and got on top for a while. It was a very close round. Wilson almost had the armbar at one stage. I would have just given it to Wilson, but very close. I think, I was talking to a couple of people, and a couple of people said Pedro, but it was one of those. In the second, Pedro was immediately hurt with a lovely spinning back fist from JJ Wilson. Carvalho did really well to survive. I thought the fight was going to be stopped, but he did a great job. JJ Wilson landed some McGregor elbows. Pedro took him down, but landed mounted, and the referee stopped it in. There was a lot of strikes before that, and from the referee's point of view, you see a lot of strikes, then someone gets mounted and takes a few more strikes. I think it was a good stoppage. Pedro taking a lot of strikes, but JJ Wilson now 8-0. He looks a top prospect coming through here. For him and short notice, a great win. A tough fight for Pedro on short notice as well. He was supposed to fight Daniel Weichel up until 2 weeks ago maybe, or something like that. Pedro had no corner either. I know I'm not sure exactly what happened, but he said because of COVID, and I don't know if they're connected now or not, but Brian Moore was forced to pull out of his fight because he said on Instagram and on Twitter that he actually contracted COVID-19 himself, and he's doing well and everything like that. But so it's a tough time for SBG at the moment. Also, and James Gallagher is out of his fight. I reported that yesterday. No reason given yet. But him and Patchy Mix is off, and they're looking for a replacement for Patchy Mix, so that's a huge blow after what had been a good week for MMA in Ireland. Brian Moore is supposed to fight Goyito Perez, which would be a huge fight for him as well, so that's that anyway from that point of view. Mads Burnell and Saul Rogers was the fight I suppose a lot of people in this part of the world expected it to be. Mads almost got the Japanese necktie, I think it was, in round one. Looked absolutely phenomenal and got to rear naked choke in round two. A lot of people, when he was in Cage Warriors, I remember we were debating about UFC Dublin. Remember it was coming that time, and I was like, Paul Hughes would probably be better off in the UFC than fighting Mads Burnell at that stage of his career, because Mads Burnell is a fucking animal. He is. I can't believe the UFC let him go. Bellator are lucky to have him. I think he would be fighting for a Bellator title within the next year. I think he's that good. If he can stay fit and if he can keep getting fights, he is an absolute beast on the ground, and he can cause people trouble striking as well. But Saul Rogers is no mug. Saul Rogers is a very, very good fighter, and Mads Burnell destroyed him here in the second round. Karl Albrektsson as well from Sweden got a good win over Victor Nimkov. Lance Gibson Jr., who's actually the stepson of what's her name? Julia Budd, got a good win here. Raymond Daniels went out and got takedowns against Peter Stanonik, and he looked alright, not great. Then there was Bosnian versus Jackson, he won that. Maori beat Sean Brimful of Asher. There was other people fighting as well. Julia Budd, we mentioned that. Paul Daly against Abu Hamasi. If people haven't seen this, get it on wherever you are, if it's on the Virgin Media app here in Ireland, or I don't know if it's on the Bellator website yet or whatever. This was one of the fights of the year. It's on like the 10-year anniversary of Daly versus Diaz. This first round was brilliant. The second round was brilliant. This is one of my favourite fights ever, to be honest. I know maybe people say, that's mad, but it was a great fight. It was an absolute fantastic fight. Paul Daly was nearly KO'd very early, and he came back and he got the KO with the left hook. And you know what? This just brought a bit of joy to MMA. You know, Paul Daly is one of those fighters where he comes out, he throws fucking fists. He's one of these guys that lets it go. You know, he has a proclivity to violence. He will just let it fucking go. And look, he might lose some, he might win some, but this was one of the wins, and it was absolutely fucking brilliant. Cut a brilliant promo afterwards. Said, like, I'm the best 175-pound fighter in the world. I was like, come on, let's fight for this 175-pound belt, even though it doesn't exist. So it was brilliant. I absolutely loved it from Paul Daly. It was a great performance from him. Vet Arteaga beat Desira Yanez there as well in a post-lim that happened in the middle of the fight. And while Corey Anderson got a ground and pound win over Yagshimuradov. I was surprised Yagshimuradov was throwing a few uppercuts. Didn't land any of them. I think one of them just landed there about 2 minutes ago. But Corey Anderson just, took him down. Beeston was better on top. And that was that, basically. He almost won near the end of round 2, I believe it was, yeah, and then he won in round 3. So, good performance from Beeston, another guy who made a mug of himself online during the week, but however, these things happen in MMA. There was actually the anniversary of that as well, I think, today. So, yeah. And in the main event, Vadim Nimkov versus Phil Davis. I mentioned it earlier. Nimkov just destroyed him for 3 rounds. Last 2 rounds were close because I think Nimkov got a bit tired. And, I actually feel like the overall analysis, Phil Davis, to say he doesn't throw enough is grand. But in this fight, I think Nimkov had a great plan to prey on someone like Phil Davis, who doesn't throw enough. I think he went out there immediately and kind of stopped Phil Davis throwing more than Phil not throwing. And I think when Nimkov got a little bit tired and it opened up a bit for Davis, he was able to land shots towards the end. So all 3 judges gave the last 2 rounds to Davis. I gave all 5 to Nimkov, but they were very close, the last 2, but Nimkov without a shadow of a doubt won. So yeah, that's that for that one anyway. Next week, there's no Bellator card, but there is a ONE FC on TNT 3. We had a ONE FC card during the week as well. John Lineker's fighting Troy Tronton on this one. John Wayne Parr is on this against Nicky Holskin in the kickboxing match, I believe. So if you like that sort of thing, which I don't, that should be fun for you. And in the PFL, number 1, I think, is Brendan Loughnane like the main event in this, or is that what one of the cards? They had like a vote of who's going to be the main event, and I think
Pettis, is it?
Yeah, but or maybe it's the main event of like the prelims or something. But yeah, Pettis against Clay Collard. Nathan Shooter against Marcin Held is on this. Lance Palmer against Bubba Jenkins. And as you mentioned, Brendan Loughnane against Shaman Rice. Some fun fights in this. It's a pretty good PFL card, isn't it? I must actually ask him where we can watch it. I don't know yet. I assume YouTube. It was on air before, but is it air still going? But I think it's on the way out. But I'll ask and I'll tweet it out. But some good fights in this card, isn't there?
Yeah, it's the best card they've had in a while.
It's the first card they've had in a while.
Look down the card. Yeah, but yeah, even longer. But yeah, Brendan Loughnane, we've talked about him a lot. Obviously, we've seen him fight, we've seen him throughout the years, and I think the whole MMA community was kind of disappointed with the way he was treated by Dana White. Yeah. It was kind of like turned into a running joke. It was just, no matter what he did, even on Contender Series, he wouldn't be picked for somebody with a way less impressive resume or performance. So I don't know what that's all about, but hopefully he can put that behind him, because it doesn't look like that UFC dream is coming back. Mm-hmm. This is a big fight for him, though. You know, this is a tough fight. Shimon Morales, good fighter. And if you look up the fight, you have Marcin Held on it as well. Obviously, Lance Palmer.
Tyler
Diamond, Lance Palmer. Yeah, Tyler Diamond. Just looking down the card here. There's a few fights. Anthony Dizzy,
that could
Chris
be good,
Wade.
like, tough wrestling match, couldn't it? Palmer against Jenkins. Palmer's he's team alpha male, isn't he? He's been with them for a long time. I don't know if he's still with him or not, but that could be a good old battle. So yeah, there's some good stuff. Like, I think the thing with PFL as well, you know, with these tournaments, I don't know if all these fights are in tournaments, but a lot of them are anyway. Is that, like, you have the ability to make $1 million if you win this, and in MMA, you know, we've talked.
It adds jeopardy.
Yeah, absolutely. Because look, I've said before, and people have asked me about PFL. Look, it's a PFL with the whole tournament thing. It's a gimmick. The gimmick is only as good as the reward at the end of it, but it's also only as good as the fighters you have in it. And when you have people like Pettis, when you have like Lance Palmer, Bubba Jenkins, when you have Brendan Loughnane, when you have Tom Lawler, when you have Rory McDonald, and all these different ones, now obviously not on the same one, that to me adds a bit of jeopardy to it. That adds a bit of quality to it. And I think they've done a good job of improving that a little bit. I'm not the world's biggest PFL fan, but I've always think I've been fair with PFL with the gimmick that they have. The more quality you add to that, the better it will be. And I think this season to have the best quality I've ever had, and I think it will be very good. If Clarissa Shields as well is making her MMA debut on June 10th, so we don't have long to wait for that. So that should be fun. But yeah, I'm looking forward to this card, and I'm looking forward to everything coming up. A couple of other things as well. The light heavyweight title is going to be on the line the 4th of September. Jan Blachowicz versus Glover Teixeira, the fight I think a lot of people wanted before the last one. And at UFC 265 on August 7th, Amanda Nunes will be fighting Juliana Pena back down 135 pounds. Also, Leah McCourt is fighting Janae Harding on the 21st of May at Bellator 259. It's a big fight for Leah. I think she's ranked. I think both of them are ranked. So if Leah wins that, she's not too far away from a title shot, which I think she probably need a few fights before that. But however, and McGregor versus Poirier, we broke that down last week. But just as kind of the podcast finished, it was made official. So that's going to be happening on July 10th. Two last things before I throw it over to Sean to look at last night's card. Cage Warriors have re-signed Paul Hughes, and they have also re-signed, I suppose, Paul Redmond. I think this is great news for everyone. I think it's great news for Cage Warriors. I think it's great news for both lads. Myself and Ian on the Chasing Pack were talking about Paul Redmond, and maybe, you know, a Brave or a KSW at this stage of his career would be the right place for him. But I think Cage Warriors is a good one for Paul Redmond because, you know, he's obviously can stay close to home, and there's lots of fights, and he knows Graham Boylan, he knows Ian Dean, he knows the promotion, he's been there before, and they have a stacked lightweight picture at the moment. And I think it's good. Like, Decky McAleenan's in that, Joe McColgan's in it, Sardari the champion, Ben Lakhdar, Adam Vintra, Figlak as well. Are you happy to see Redzer back there? I think it's a good move.
It would lead you to believe that Redzer wants to make another run at you know, the UFC, because, you know, the payment that he's probably getting at Cage Warriors may be better than a lot of people in Cage Warriors, but I doubt it's as big as the money he could make elsewhere. You mentioned KSW, like, there's a lot of money going around different promotions for, like, you know, UFC veterans who are really good tests for up and coming guys, and, you know, Redzer's definitely one of them, and he probably could have made a much bigger paycheck if he had to went somewhere else. But, you know, he's it seems to me, I haven't talked to him, I haven't got any inside knowledge or anything, but that move would indicate to me that he wants to try and get back into the UFC. So yeah, I think it's you know, it's a ballsy move. It's easy for guys to, you know, take bigger money in other promotions, and it's guaranteed money. You know, it's coming in. You have like a 3 or 4 fight contract, whatever. It's a risk to you know, go back to Cage Warriors and try to work your way back into the UFC, and you might only make a fraction of what you're going to make. So yeah, fair play to him for going for it if that's what he's doing. You know, maybe he's on some kind of special contract, but I highly doubt it.
Maybe he's after taking over the Paddy Pimblett contract, is
he? Yeah, but even, you know, even Paddy Pimblett's contract, I don't know if that would be as big as some of the guys in, you know, for example, KSW. Yeah. So, fair play to Redzer. You know, as you said, there's a lot of good matchups there. He's always, his style is always going to be a problem for a lot of guys, for most guys. So he could definitely, do really well in that division. So he's probably looking at that, thinking he can rack up a good few wins in a row here in Cage Warriors, and use that kind of connection with Cage Warriors and the UFC to get back into the UFC. So fair play to him.
Yeah, and I think the same goes for Paul Hughes. There was talks of him going to Brave as well. Even on the Brave broadcast, they mentioned like Paul Hughes. Could we see him in the Brave cage? Well, okay, fair enough. And there's always rumours flying about, but I was really, really delighted to see Paul Hughes sign back, because I think Paul Hughes, I think Paul Hughes might be the most talented guy in Irish MMA at the moment, but I still think he is the one where you'd look at and you're like, he needs to add a few things. He's had obviously a couple of close fights recently. He lost that fight to Vucinic. I think Paul Hughes needs to add a bit more cage time more than anything else, because with that you get better fight IQ, you get better game planning, you get more experience, and I think with the skill set that he has, that's the dangerous combination. I would be in no rush, even if it's 18 months down the line, it takes 4 or 5 more fights to get to the UFC. I think that would do Paul Hughes nothing but good, to be honest. I'm delighted to see he signed with Cage Warriors, because if you do go to Brave, they're throwing you right to the lions immediately, and you might win the fight, but you might be in a fucking 5-round fight against this absolute animal, and then you've no chance of getting to the UFC. And I just, if you're a fight at that stage of your career, like Paul Hughes is, and like say Ian Gary is, and other people on the way up, and they've talked about getting to the UFC, Cage Warriors is the place for it. Okay, you might take the financial hit for 3 or 4 fights, but are you fighting to be the very best in the world and to get the very best money in the world and to get money eventually? Are you fighting for, right, I'm on the way up, I need the money now, and then, we'll worry about what happens later on? If you could do both, if you could go through Cage Warriors and get paid 10 and 10 and then go to the UFC and get, $1 million for fighting for title, perfect. But that's not realistic at the moment. I think it's there's obviously it's a big debate, and it's a debate we've had before with a lot of Irish people obviously signing for Bellator, now Brave and stuff as well, but and Brave isn't just a full-time stop either, I suppose. But I'm delighted to see that Paul Hughes has signed with Cage Warriors, and Paul Redmond as well. He needs a big fight. I think you put him in there against someone right at the top. I'm not sure, but do you reckon he'd fight Joe McColgan? Do you reckon that fight would happen to 2 lads to take that, or do they best avoiding each other?
Yeah, well, they trained together. Redzer and McColgan have trained together in the past, and that they know each other and they're friends. But if I don't see why not. If they're doing it for free in the gym, they might as well do it in the cage. But some people have a different. Some people are very, very against fighting teammates or people they even passingly know. So I don't know what both guys. Maybe one guy would be up for it, the other guy wouldn't. It's hard to know. But I think both guys would just say here, we could be friends after. Yeah,
I think if Joe gets a title shot against Sardari, I think Ben Lakhdar versus Paul Redmond is a very, very good fight. Or maybe if Redmond gets the title fight, maybe Joe versus Ben Lakhdar too. Or, there's a lot of good people around there. But however, look, I'm looking forward to seeing the 2 Pauls back in Cage Warriors. Obviously Ian Gary as well fighting for title coming up. Decky McAleen and still around there as well, and Joe McColgan as we mentioned, and a few of the lads from down in Cork and everything. So it's an exciting time for Cage Warriors. Right. Let me throw it over now to Sean Sheehan to bring you up to date with the goings on from last night. Take it away, Shawnee. Thank you very much, Shawnee. Right. Where do we begin? If people weren't watching that, if people weren't up during the night, if you're just waking up to this in the morning and listening to me talking about the UFC Fight Night 24 card and the Thriller Fight Club, Ben Askren versus Jake Paul, it was a bit mad. Look, I'll go through the UFC first, because I know a lot of people don't care about this Ben Askren, so I leave that until the end, and I'll save you that. But you can't speak about them apart at the start. Just to unpack it, I suppose, it was one of those nights where there's 2 events on at the exact same time. Both main events came on at the exact same time, and it was going back and forth throughout them. Now, the biggest issue, I think, for the UFC and for people watching the UFC and also wanting to see what happened with Ben Askren was the UFC card was absolutely atrocious. Every fight on the main card went to a decision. 2 more before the main card went to a decision, and only 2 fights finished on the whole night. So it was one of those cards where it just wasn't a great card. If you didn't stay up to watch it, you missed basically nothing. There were, like, I saw a few people saying, "Oh, there's like contentious decisions and stuff." I didn't really think there was much in that. Even, you know, there was one fight that ended, and it went to a no contest, or not a no contest, but like what's it called, a technical decision in the third round. And I thought there could have been a few 10-10s there, but there wasn't. Every judge scored it 10-9, so that was the only thing. But it was one of those nights. So let's run through the UFC card quickly. Tony Gravely, I thought, was probably the standout person on this card. Looked really good in the opener against Anthony Burchak after Ian interviewed him during the week, so Ian put on the good touch on him. Looked really good on the ground with his striking and all. Austin Hubbardine got a win over Dakota Bush, 29-28 in all 3 cards. You know, exactly what it says in the tin. 1-2, lost 1. Gerald Meerschaert, I thought, looked good as well. He's submission game, we all know about that. Really good. Got him with a guillotine after the 2nd minute of the first round. The closest fight, I suppose, was Jessica Pena versus Lupita Godinez. A really, really close fight. I thought Godinez won the first. I haven't seen the cards actually, but Pena took her back like 3 minutes into the first round. Landed no shots, didn't get any submissions off after Godinez had kind of beaten her up. And the second and third round were just very close. Like, Godinez was on the ground and Pena was kind of dominating her for most of the round. She got up, she landed one good shot, but not a huge shot. And I thought Pena landed some nice shots as well. So I would have given Pena the second round, to be honest. I thought it was close. I haven't seen the judges' cards. This is one of those fights where it could be 30-27 either way. You know, it was one of those. And the third, I gave it to Godinez based on one slam, and I didn't even think there was much in that slam, to be honest. So I would have scored of her, but based on nothing, really, really based on nothing. After that, Alexander Romanov won, as I mentioned, that technical decision. 1 and 2 were shared, and then 2 of the judges gave him the minute and a half of round 3. Luis Pena came out then and had a good performance enough, but a split decision, a close fight with Alexander Munoz. Tracy Cortez looked okay as well against Justine Cation with a close one, split decision. Malkoun used his wrestling against Alassane to win the decision. Arlovsky and Sherman put on a good fight. There was some big shots and big leather exchange in that, and they both kind of came through it, so fair play to the 2 of them. And Robert Whittaker was phenomenal. This was a display by Robert Whittaker that I've never seen from Robert Whittaker before in totality. Like, I spoke about it last week. I was like, how is Robert Whittaker going to win? How does he normally win his fights? He wins it by, like, going forward, breaking your steam, you know, breaking what you do in the middle because of the timing he has, but also the pace and the amount of output that he outputs. there you go, outputs. I'm fucking Mike Goldberg on it. But that's the beauty of Robert Whittaker. He didn't do that here though. He did the breaking kind of in the middle. I think who was it? Conor Rebush had a good tweet about it, and I was thinking about it just as I kind of read the tweet. But as Gastelum was throwing his combinations, he was avoiding the first shot, striking in the middle, and then avoiding the second shot from Gastelum as well. It was absolutely beautiful stuff from Robert Whittaker. But he was fighting more off the back foot than I've ever seen him before. You know, he was fighting Gastelum's fight. Like, if you were to predict this fight, say if Gastelum gets to go forward all the time, throw all these big shots, and Robert Whittaker's not going forward much, I think everyone probably said, oh, Gastelum might have won that fight. You know, he might have knocked him out, or he might have won. In actual fact, that's what happened, and Robert Whittaker won 50-45 on all 3 judges. I came up to record before I even heard the results, so that's actually the first I've seen it, but it makes sense, because it was one of those fights. Almost knocked Gastelum out with a head kick in the first round. Just a brilliant display from Robert Whittaker. You have to make him versus Adesanya now. There's no getting around that, so look, it was worth staying up until, what time have we, 6:22 in the morning to see that, because it was absolutely phenomenal. So yeah, that's that. Not a great card, but a phenomenal performance from Whittaker. On this Ben Askren fight, if you just want to hear the result, I'll tell you the result first, and then I'll talk maybe a bit more about the event itself, if people want to tune out and not listen to that. So the result was Ben Askren was knocked out by Jake Paul in the first round with a big overhand right punch that was set up by a nice jab from Jake Paul. Askren came out and landed a couple of shots early. He was the very kind of high up Ben Askren boxing stance, which we've seen out of him before. Terrible boxer, just is not good at all. And Jake Paul, you know, if you watched his couple of bouts that we've seen before, he knows how to throw a jab, he knows how to throw a right hand. He can defend, and he's fast and relatively athletic. And he did a great job, you know. People can say whatever they want. As a bout itself, as an exhibition, Jake Paul was just superior to Ben Askren, and he knocked him down. And I would say knocked him out. It was a TKO, definitely. Ben Askren got up, and the referee stopped it. He was doing like the standing 8 count thing, and the referee came in and stopped it. Could Ben Askren have gone on? Yeah, absolutely. I don't think it's a case of like he would have been just finished immediately as well if he had gone on. So, but I think Jake Paul would have won. It was just too much of a skill difference there. Like, people equate Jake Paul inside of the ring with outside of the ring. For a YouTuber, he's a very, very good boxer. For anyone, you know, normally off the street, if they go into a boxercise class, Jake Paul is going to be miles and miles better than you. Now, if he goes in there and he fights Canelo, he's going to get destroyed or whatever. But as we saw tonight, there are guys in MMA, Ben Askren may be the very worst of them, but there's guys that he can beat. Now, I think it's interesting what he does next. Where is the move for Jake Paul? Does he take another one like this and fight Dylan Dennis? Maybe that's the move, where it's another one where he'll probably win it on the feet, you know, probably box up Dylan Dennis as well. Although Dylan is a bit better. So I would say significantly better, actually, than Ben Askren, but still not fantastic. Or does he go all out and go immediately for McGregor? Like that McGregor fight is going to happen now, I think. I think he showed tonight that he can knock a guy out, and that's all he needs. You know, people can make a highlight reel of Jake Paul knocking out an MMA fighter and goes, he can knock out guys. He can knock out Conor McGregor. You can build it as an actual fight now and put all the rest behind it as well. So I would be surprised if that didn't happen somewhere down the line. But the thing is, so this whole Thriller card, this whole spectacle, they had Ice Cube, and they and they had Snoop Dogg, and Justin Bieber was there, and he sang a couple of songs, and other people who I'd never heard of as well. And Kevin Early reported they spent tens of millions to get those people in with no crowd, and on Fight TV, pay-per-view and things like that. How much money are you bringing in? Like, where is the money coming from? Is this unending burning of money going to be able to last? Like, is that a thing that happens? It can't be unless it's some fucking, I don't know where the money is coming from, some Russian oligarch or, you know, Saudi Arabia or somewhere like that. Maybe if that's it, maybe it can go on. But it doesn't seem logical. And it also doesn't seem logical for people like Justin Bieber to be associated with a madness like this. And for his like agent and his publicist and stuff to be associated with this, where Oscar De La Hoya is coming on the commentary absolutely out of his fucking face, Snoop Dogg is roaring all this different shit. It's crazy altogether. No, it was funny. I thought it was funny. The Oscar De La Hoya stuff got kind of sad in the middle when you realise like that Oscar De La Hoya has had like substance abuse problems, and it was like funny for a while, the stuff he was kind of roaring and, you know, all that, but then it was like jumping the shark, where it's like, right, he's just roaring here because like he's a fucking 55-year-old man who's pissed out of his fucking face, and like no, everyone's laughing at him, and it was one of those, you know, it turned into one of those, and that was like, oh, this has kind of jumped the shark. Overall, I was watching it, I was talking to who was I talking to? I think it was Andrew McGahan. I was talking to him on voice notes, and I said it to him, was like, this is the sort of thing that me and you and everyone probably listening to this, or like Capoza and all these, the hardcore MMA fans, we will go back and watch this every time. You know, if it's on, even if it's on during the UFC, we'll have it on the background or whatever. But I clicked on like the hashtag Thriller Fight Night or whatever it was tonight, and there was normal people, you know, like journalists and musicians and sports people actually watching this. Those people will not watch this again. Maybe they might watch it once, but they're not going to continue to watch it. They might watch it if McGregor's on it. They might watch it if there's someone big on it. But they're not going to go through a 6-hour show where it's fucking just madness like this and continue to watch it. That's just, and especially when the pandemic moves on, That is just not going to happen. And the money as well, I don't know where they're going to go with that. So, look, it was it was all a bit mad, to be honest. Yeah, hold on, let me look at my notes here, see if I'm forgetting anything. I actually didn't take too many notes because during that tonight, because it was so late and it was just so insane that I was like, God Almighty, I don't know what's going on here. So yeah, my notes actually from the other day, Invicta have signed with Access TV, and they're going to be on digital platforms worldwide, so hopefully on YouTube or whatever here. I must actually ask them and find out, but that's good news. Good to see Invicta back. You know, women's sports are really taken off all over the world in all different sorts of sports, and MMA has really led the way, because, you know, MMA, as we talked about earlier on, we talked about the 2 women's fights right up there with the men's welterweight fight, and I think, you know, I said earlier on in the podcast, without even knowing I was going to say this now, that those are 2 fights I'm looking forward to more than the men's one, I think. And I think in MMA, there was a bit of it at the start where people were like, oh, don't mind the women's MMA when it came to the UFC, but now I even think like our most obnoxious of fans don't even mention it. You know, all MMA fans, I think, like women's MMA. Now, the problem with some women's MMA is that women's MMA is still growing, and men's MMA is still growing as well, I suppose. But at the entry level, I suppose, to lots of organisations, it can be very low level. But the level is getting higher all the time, and especially at the very top level, the Amanda Nunes and Zhang Weili and all, it's absolutely phenomenal. So MMA is leading the way, and Invicta has been the fight league that has provided most, if not all, of these fighters in the UFC at the moment at the very top. So fantastic to see them back, and hopefully they'll be able to grow even more and do better than they've been doing in the last few years, because I think well, I don't know what the reason is. Myself and Ian discussing the chasing back, but they've been held back a little bit. Whether it's themselves, whether it's FightPicks, whether it's the UFC, I don't know, and whether it's just the UFC taking fighters off them maybe. But I'm looking forward to see what they do. Right, it's 6:30. I'm going to go. Thank you to everybody for listening. If you have any questions for your Q&A, fire them at me. Do you know what? We'll make the Q&A free this week, Tuesday morning. Part 1 of it anyway. We'll see how many questions we have, and I'll put part 2 up on Patreon as well. So thanks everyone for listening. Peace out. See you all next time. Good luck. Welcome everybody. It's episode 308 of the Severe MMA podcast. My name is Sean Sheehan, aka Shawnee Podcasts.